it's going to be a really exciting future, put it that way. When babies are born, we already check for certain diseases. There'll just be more mainstream use of digital health technologies, I think. Perhaps lawmakers in the future will be more tech savvy. They have at least one legal voice there, and I'm interested to see if other jurisdictions will follow that. And it's fascinating to watch that area grow.
Hey guys, we're here with our new episode of Digital Health Interviews. I'm really excited to introduce our today's guest. Her name is Bianca Rose Phillips. Hi, Bianca.
Hi, Alex. It's great to be here with you.
Let's start with your short introduction. Could you please tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm a lawyer from Melbourne, Australia. And even though I have a very thick Australian accent, I'm actually from different parts of the world. So I'm half Israeli, and my family are actually from Ukraine, from Lutsk and Odessa. So it's wonderful to connect with you in Ukraine, on the other side of the world. And my interest area is digital health. So I help with digital health ideation, strategy, and I also do some work as a lawyer as well.
Very impressive. And the first thing I wanted to say is to congratulate you with the release of your book, Making Digital Health Revolution. Most of my questions are actually kind of related to the book since I've read it, and I have some questions, if you don't mind.
I'd love to discuss it. Thank you.
So digital health revolution, as you've mentioned in your books, 4 revolutions need to happen before the actual digital health revolution: technological, scientific, clinical practice, and cultural. But like every revolution in the history of mankind, it has some time frame, right? So what do you think is the time frame for all 4 revolutions to happen?
It's a really intriguing question, because I can think of digital health as, there's the big picture of where we could take this, where we could take this as humanity. And if I think about that future where precision medicine is really going to be so key, and we're going to have things like gene editing and a range of other technologies at play, I'm thinking that it will be in this century, but in the later part of this century. So I stated in the book, that I think, the 22nd century history books are going to judge our achievements for this century.
But when has it started? When do you think?
That's, also interesting, because, the work for this area has been going on for such a long time. So you could technically say it started when all of that work began, but then how do you even pinpoint that, that timing? Very, very difficult. What I've said in the book is that there's the digital health, there's existing digital health, and then there's new digital health, which is everything that takes place now and into the future following the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can think of it that way, that this has kind of turned a page, or it's a new chapter in a sense. But I think if we're going to be very technical, it would be very hard to pinpoint a precise time. I'm interested in what you think as well.
I totally agree. I didn't expect you to give me like the exact date or the year. I agree it's definitely a continuous thing. And I like the quote of one of your guest writers, Raphael Grossman, who actually had on our series as well. He said that what we call digital health is just healthcare of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great quote, describes that at some point, we're just going to stop calling it digital health. It's just going to be healthcare in general. Yeah. But if we talked a little bit about the future, and you actually have some of the examples in your book, could you just describe what do you think, what are the technologies, and how does digital health look like by the end of the 21st century?
So by the end of the 21st century, I think, we already do this when babies are born. We already check for certain diseases. But I think that we will be looking at the genetic level a lot earlier. So, the embryonic stage, and we'll be, there'll be more, I guess, insight into what's at play there. And there'll just be more mainstream use of digital health technologies, I think, moving forward. It'll become part of kind of standard healthcare practice. And, artificial intelligence will play a key role, obviously, moving forward. It's going to be a really exciting future, put it that way.
I totally agree. It's going to be exciting, and I think in 10 and 20 years, and we're hopefully going to see that. Okay, here's another quote from your book. Like always, lawmakers struggle to keep pace with the continuous growth of technology. Well, it makes sense, but startups right now, they're moving so fast they can like create a POC or MVP version and go live and invite patients like in days. Do you think can actual lawmakers keep pace with startups and tech innovators so we don't have that huge gap between all the laws and all the technology?
I think that lawmakers will always slightly lag behind because we don't have lawmakers don't have the know-how on the technology side. Although, maybe I shouldn't use the word always, because perhaps lawmakers in the future will be more tech savvy and they will have the skills that will enable them to better understand what's at play and assist with moving things forward at a more rapid pace. That being said, it's not good to generalize, because we can see in some areas that lawmaking is kind of moving ahead of its time, in a sense, in some areas of artificial intelligence. So it's not always lagging behind technology. Sometimes it's actually very forward thinking, not responding to a crisis, but actually thinking ahead to what could happen in the future.
But do you think at some point lawmakers can slow down the progress of the revolution?
I think at some point I think at some point they'll have to draw these lines of what's permissible and what's not permissible, just as they do today in areas like genetic testing and IVF and so forth. They've decided where the line is to be drawn. That is going to continue to happen as we move forward, and as it gets even more complicated and there's more at stake from perspective of where humanity is going and where we're going as a species. I think those lines will have to be drawn, but then there will be differences across jurisdictions, just as there is today. So there's going to have to be a global approach to all of this.
I was curious, what countries do you think are a really good example of great lawmaking systems that are actually helping making digital health revolution? What countries at the top?
Well, I think Australia is actually doing pretty well. When I first started in this area, I was a little bit skeptical about how we were approaching things here. But I think we've actually done pretty well as of late. So I think that's a good sign. There are some leaders in digital health around the world. I guess I don't know if I should pinpoint any specific lawmaking power authority, but I've definitely got my eye on what's going on in Israel, the US, Australia. Those tend to be the three jurisdictions where I'm really focused in and looking at more detail than some of the other jurisdictions. I'm interested in what's going on in, some parts of Europe as well, and what's happening in Germany with the prescription of apps, which, many years ago I said that apps will be prescribed. And of course, that is how they've taken it. And I'm interested to see if other jurisdictions will follow that in the future and how that goes. So,
yeah, me too. In our previous episode, we talked with Jhonatan Bringas Dimitriades, and we talked a lot about the importance of such a role in a startup as a CMO, Chief Medical Officer. And the question for you is, do you think digital health startups nowadays should bring a lawyer, a legal professional who is going to consult on how to be compliant with all the laws on the market they're working on. Should they do that from the very beginning or later on? What do you think?
I think they should do it from the very beginning because it's such an important, thing. So it's so important to be legally compliant. And it's important to get that advice early so that you don't make too many mistakes and then have to go back and fix it later on. So if you can get that advice up front, then you at least know what you are up against and how much it's going to cost moving forward. And you have a bit of an idea, and you also have a team to support you. So I do actually look at digital health companies, whether they have a legal and regulatory team when I go onto their websites, and I check to see if that's listed there. And if it's not, I'm just wondering, it could be that it's an external advisor that they have, which is perfectly fine. But but I do wonder, and I just ask myself the question, do they have legal advice? And are they getting that advice? I also think, it's important to have people involved who are thinking about, ethics, philosophy, and other areas of law, like lawmaking and some other areas of legal philosophy, because that's all really important in looking to the future and kind of the future that we're building. And there is a greater interest these days on the ethics side of things and philosophy, a lot more than I thought, actually. Originally, when I started, I didn't think there would be such an interest in philosophy, but there is. So yes, I think a legal and regulatory team is absolutely essential, whether it's an external team or in-house. That's a must. And then, I've been fortunate to join some companies as their global, digital health law and philosophy advisor to add that extra, another perspective or lens as well.
And as you said, you're a part of some of the digital health startups. Can you just in general describe how does that go? Like, do you follow all the new laws that coming out in that specific country and then help the company be compliant to these new laws?
Yeah, so with that role, it's not. I'm not working as their lawyer or legal advisor at all. So that's more looking at the ethical challenges, some philosophical questions that can come up, and also questions of lawmaking and how society, could move forward. So thinking about it in that perspective. But of course, if I see something that requires the attention of a legal team, I might flag that with the company and just say that to check with their lawyers about a particular issue. I do work as a lawyer in Melbourne, Australia, so as an Australian lawyer advising companies here, and we do advisory work, and that's where I can help with compliance. So if a company was looking for legal advice, I would ask them to go to the company that I work for here in Australia. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, my next question goes perfectly into what you said before. So let's say there are three main parts of this whole healthcare equation: hospitals or medical institutions, patients, of course, and the companies like startups, companies that are working digital health. Who do you think is the most vulnerable nowadays among those three? Like hospitals, they lots of time have outdated software. They're not that eager to adopt those technologies. Companies are trying to make the revolution happen faster, but there are still data breaches happening around the world all the time. And patients who are willing, they have to provide their PHI under the risk of disclosure, possibly. So who do you think is the most vulnerable and possibly would need some legal help?
Potentially all three in different contexts, but patients, I guess, it depends on who's the party with the power in a given context. So many times the patient is the most vulnerable in a given relationship, but not always. Sometimes there is an interesting power dynamic at play. So I think all parties need advice and help and guidance.
Any specific recommendations to patients who are, in our case, would be users of apps, web system platforms, how to try to be more secure and save their PHI?
I think it's really a mindset of, taking it seriously. So to take their health information seriously, to know that they are somewhat responsible for protecting that information, that it's not one-sided. They also have to, protect their information and look after their sensitive information. So I think just being mindful about what they're doing with their information, just being careful. But I think given that power dynamic, companies have a big responsibility, and so do hospitals, just to make sure that they're being very clear on what they're doing with the information and complying with relevant laws, and just being fair and honest with the client or patient.
Okay. And also in your book, you often refer to such terms as personalized medicine. Could you please explain it to our audience? What do you think is personalized medicine?
Yeah, so personalized medicine, just to imagine the future where you can receive a treatment based on your own genetics and your own epigenetics and family history, but it's all considered in your treatment, and that treatment could be tailored for you. Depending on what kind of medications you tolerate better than others. So, one day in the future, they could determine potentially what drugs are better suited for treatment of a particular illness, if that would ever come up. So it's about really looking at the individual, and it's not just medication, but it's also lifestyle factors and environment. And there's so many areas of personalized medicine. It's actually a really interesting area of scientific discovery. There are so many different subspecialties within personalized medicine, and it's fascinating to watch that area grow, and and as they learn more about the environment and how it impacts our health.
Very interesting. Actually, my last question is not really a question. I would like to ask you to give some kind of recommendations or piece of advice to startups, to startup founders in digital health, since this is our main target audience. What can you recommend them to do in order to make their startup successful?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to do that. So, I think from where I stand, and I'm looking at it from a particular perspective, I think it's really important to have a team who's helping you to achieve the vision that you have. I would think about making sure that team is multidisciplinary, that you have at least one legal voice there. The second point is a lot of companies will say on their websites that they're HIPAA compliant or GDPR compliant. That may very well be the case. But sometimes, if you see that they're listing that they're compliant, and then you search the website and there's no information about, what they've done to achieve that compliance, or who's part of their team, it's very hard to know if that's correct or not. And I think it's good to be very clear on what you've actually done to achieve that compliance. The third point is to there's so many different things that you need to think about from a business perspective, but just to make sure that you're really clear from the outset on what your business case is. Make sure that it's reasonable, that your business case, is actually, it makes sense, that you're relying on good set of data to support what you're saying. And I think there are so many things that I could actually list right now, thinking through the companies that I've helped, but there are three that's just to get you going. And, of course, very happy to help and to offer any further guidance to any companies that are listening today.
Thank you, Bianca. I think that was really important to hear for lots of startup founders. Again, talking to all the audience, all the viewers, I recommend to download the book. making digital health revolution. And we're gonna leave a link to Bianca's website under this video, so you can easily find that book. And there are really lots of great frameworks and exercises that can help you to make your startup happen. So thank you again, Bianca. That was really interesting, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Alex. Wonderful again to connect with you, and congratulations for all that you're doing at BK, and being named leader in Ukraine for development. That's wonderful, and just continued success to you. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you.